No charges for the police officer who shot and killed a 14-year-old with a pellet gun. A Coloradan falsely accused of election rigging settles his lawsuit with a right-wing news outlet. We'll take you through a migrant family's journey trying to follow the government's instructions to use an app for the immigration process. If Ball Arena is going to get more expensive and exclusive, do taxpayers who cut the arena a break get any say in this? And a series of small moments that make up the biggest, most important stuff in our lives. That'll take us home on this Friday, like always. Because this is the news, but it's also a place where we get together to talk about our week. This is Next. The Aurora police officer who shot and killed a 14-year-old during a struggle will not be charged with a crime. Officers insisted that Jordell Richardson was going for a gun at the time. It's something you don't see on their body camera video. And only a week later, they acknowledged it was a pellet gun. Aurora police say that Jordell and some of his friends had robbed a liquor store near East 8th and Dayton Street back on June 1st. Two officers tackled Richardson in an alley nearby. In the scrum, one of the officers shoots the teenager in the stomach. A source informed on the decision says that prosecutors have decided against charges. Police said that Jordell was reaching for a gun, and they later said that he'd also flashed that weapon at the liquor store clerk during the robbery. Aurora Police Chief Art Acevedo did not disclose to the public that it was a pellet gun until a week later. The chief said that it didn't matter in the split second of the action, but then he also blamed his subordinates for not telling him sooner. Jordell's family and community activists protested after his killing. His mother said her son made a mistake and that police didn't give him a chance to redeem himself. Colorado had more schools forcibly assimilating Indigenous children than historians thought. A state-mandated investigation has identified 9 federally funded schools for Native youth in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's nearly double the previous estimate. State legislators required this, saying that they wanted to recognize the child abuse, the death, and the resulting generational trauma for Indigenous families. A federal investigation had identified 5 so-called Indian boarding schools that operated in Colorado through the early 1900s. But state researchers expanded their criteria to include federally supported boarding schools that were on tribal reservations and day schools that operated with the goal of assimilating Indigenous children. History Colorado's research also found burial sites for children who died while attending 2 well-known schools, the Teller Institute in Grand Junction and the Fort Lewis Indian Boarding School in Hesperus. The impacted tribes get to see this full report first. Then it'll be made public in October. Another win for Denver-based Dominion voting systems, another loss for the conspiracy theorists and the conservative media outlets that pushed misinformation that it was Dominion that rigged the 2020 presidential election. Dominion employee Eric Coomer has now reached a settlement with the right-wing TV network One America News, as well as the most prominent broadcaster on that channel. Coomer was targeted by name by former President Trump's legal team after a conservative activist out of Douglas County, Joe Oltmann, suggested that Coomer himself, Dominion employee, admitted to rigging the election on what Oltmann said was an Antifa conference call.
Someone interrupts and says, "What are we going to do if effing Trump wins?" And he responds with, and I'm going to paraphrase this because obviously I didn't write exactly what he wrote, right? Is "Don't worry about the election. Trump is not going to win. I made effing sure of that. Ha ha ha."
Oltmann has never provided evidence of this Antifa Dominion election rigging scheme. He's been sued, along with the Trump campaign and various conservative media and political figures who pushed that idea. Denver's been seeing a steady increase in migrants from the southern border in recent weeks. The city says that hundreds of them have been sent here on buses arranged by Texas's Republican governor. One thing that is often talked about in this conversation is whether asylum seekers are following the rules. Tonight, we can give you an inside look at some of what that entails. People crossing the border are told to use an app to navigate the immigration process. As our Angeline McCall reports, the app is unreliable, confusing, and can sometimes lead to families getting separated.
Welcome to Terminal B.
They started the journey as a family.
No sé por qué pasó tanto tiempo, 3 meses.
They never knew along the way they wouldn't continue together.
No me imaginé que iba a ser tanto tiempo.
Inside New York's LaGuardia Airport, Ana and Fatima have arrived here without their mom.
Yo siempre ¿Cuándo será el día que vamos a estar juntos? ¿Cuándo?
Their mother, Jocelyn, hasn't seen her daughters in months.
3 meses, imagínate. Exactamente mañana son 3 meses. Imagínate tú eso, ¿ah?
After a long journey, they're separated of all things by an app. All asylum seekers use what's called the CBP-1 app to legally go through a port of entry at the border.
Tienes que hacerlo por una aplicación.
Day after day, migrants sign in as soon as appointments become available. But with millions of people using the app at once, the app would crash.
Mientras yo hice esa aplicación, yo hice el registro de nosotros 4. Pero yo diariamente me metía en información anticipada, me metía sola y yo no sabía que estaba haciendo un registro sola.
Because of that mistake, only Jocelyn could cross into the United States.
Gracias a Dios conté con el consentimiento de mi esposo. Me dijo, tranquila, Josie, vaya usted adelante. Dios quiso que fuera así.
Vamos.
También mi hija mayor me dio mucha fuerza. Porque en realidad yo no quería ir sin mi familia. Continué, pero fue muy difícil separarme de mi familia. Fue muy duro.
Leaving her husband and daughters behind. Jocelyn spent a month in Denver's shelter system alone.
Perdón. Seguramente están saliendo en este momento. Voy a ver si puedo hablar con ellos.
3 months of texts, calls, and video chats until the news.
Perfecto, mi amor.
Her family finally got an immigration appointment.
Pero a lo que yo me enteré que le salió la cita, a mí me volvió el alma al cuerpo, mami. Y ya de verdad que nada me puede perturbar ahorita en lo absoluto. Estoy muy feliz. En un principio me cuesta aceptar algo cuando viene de otra manera que no me lo esperaba, ¿ves?
She continued without them then and again now as she reaches her time limit in Denver's shelter.
Tan sencillo como eso.
Jocelyn will now find her family again in what was always meant as their final destination, New York.
Ay, yo voy a abrazar a mis hijas tan bellas, mis princesas que yo amo tanto. Y bueno, voy a llorar porque yo soy una llorona de primera.
A reunion that took 4 months of dreaming when they'd be together again.
No la voy a poder evitar, pero van a ser lágrimas, pero de alegría.
The reunion happened earlier this summer. From start to finish, it was almost 4 months until Jocelyn was able to be with her family. At one point, she told me that she thought the reunion was never going to happen because her family could not get an appointment, even though they were trying daily at that time.
I don't think people are going to forget seeing that. I think there's so much said about, folks need to follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules. And what's so vital about your reporting is you're showing us how the rules actually work, don't work, impact folks who are trying to follow the pathway that's been laid out.
Well, either way, it's not easy, and I think that's what this story shows, right? You can go through all the steps, and even though you're trying your hardest, sometimes it really is just a matter of when you get that appointment. And for her, they were really desperate. They were trying, right? They're separated. Their kids are young. They're 2 daughters. So they were trying their hardest to make sure that they could be reunited, and still it took them 4 months. So imagine people that aren't in such a position and what they also go through and how long they have to wait as well.
Angelina McCall, thank you very much. Your love and care for animals in trouble is really something to behold. Your latest Word of Thanks microgiving campaign has raised $40,000 in 2 days for the Longmont Humane Society. Longmont Humane has seen a drop in donations recently, but no decrease in the number of pets that need behavioral training before they can be placed in a forever home. Longmont Humane is intent on training pets that other shelters might be forced to euthanize. 98% of the pets that come into them go back out to forever families. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 to get the link to join me in donating to the Longmont Humane Society. Our donations will help them continue that work with the dogs and cats that might otherwise be deemed too difficult to get a second chance.
Obviously, you don't want to open a building that no one can afford to come to.
That's what they said when what is now Ball Arena first opened. Now some Next viewers are wondering, will expensive upgrades price them out of the place they love? And do taxpayers get any say in this? And there are union members who want one of Colorado's biggest employers to pay up, or they'll go on strike. 3,000 Kaiser Permanente employees in Colorado could go on strike if their union doesn't reach a deal with management this month. Companies' unionized workers in Colorado voted to authorize a potential strike today. The union contract covering 85,000 Kaiser employees nationwide expires at the end of September. Kaiser says it's Colorado's largest nonprofit healthcare provider, 6,800 employees across 33 locations. Union reps say they want the nonprofit to address what they're calling dangerously low staffing levels. They also want higher wages. Point out the nonprofit organization's made $3 billion profit so far this year. Lauren Robinson, happy first day of fall, or as our weather said today, whatevs.
Yes, well, it is September 1st. We're making our way into September with very hot weather. Actually, record-breaking weather. We did make it to 99 degrees at DIA, which breaks our previous record that was in 2019. I actually think our previous record was 98 degrees, so I'm gonna have to double check that. But we did make it into the upper 90s across the Front Range and Eastern Plains, and even further east, we saw some triple digits. We made it to 104 in Ray, 101 in Pueblo, 105 in Lamar. The high country even saw those 70s and 80s, 91 out west in Grand Junction. Now, temperatures starting to cool down just a tad bit as we get closer to sunset. 95 at DIA. We have winds gusting in from the southeast at around 16 miles per hour. But where our bigger story is going to be right now is going to be the western side of the state, where we have all of this monsoonal moisture making its way in from the desert southwest, and that's dropping those very brief but spotty rain showers in the high country. None of that made its way far east enough to come into the Front Range and Eastern Plains. In fact, we've actually been very hot and dry across the eastern half of the state. So we do have red flag warnings in effect until 8 o'clock. That's going to be for gusty winds, dry air along central portions of the Eastern Plains. So we do want to continue to watch for increased fire weather danger there. In the meantime, we're partly cloudy, pretty dry, warm and breezy. Overnight lows near 65 degrees, about 10 degrees warmer than where we usually are this time of year. And if you're making plans for our extended Labor Day weekend, tomorrow another hot, dry day. Sunday and Monday, we drop down just a tad bit into the lower 90s. We're still above average here. We're going to watch for very slight storm chances, though your outdoor plans should be safe for the Labor Day weekend. And then those temperatures drop even further toward the middle of the week.
Denver taxpayers did not directly fund Ball Arena the way they did Mile High, but they did cut the owners a break. So, do we get any say in the venue's future? And the seasons may be changing, one thing stays the same. We will end the week the way we always do, sharing the little moments that are the big stuff in your life. Ball Arena could be getting fancy. Told you yesterday that Kroenke Sports is considering some swanky upgrades that could price out some fans. Our next question comes from Laura, who wants to know why the owners aren't more accountable to the public. She asked, don't they get tax breaks? Laura, let's have Steve Stager take on your question.
Coors Field and Mile High both took votes of the people to fund construction, making Ball Arena the only professional sports stadium in Denver not funded directly by taxpayers. It doesn't mean the venue, formerly known as Pepsi Center, didn't get a break.
In some ways, it was all privately financed. On the other hand, as part of those negotiations, taxes that were originally paid back at the old McNichols were dropped.
Let's look back, shall we?
I think it's a good deal. This is a deal that the city can hold its head up.
Back to 1997 with Ball Arena just as a damp field near the South Platte River.
It doesn't look like much now, but in the next couple of months, construction is scheduled to begin in this field.
Back then, it took the city and Ascent the company that owned the Nuggets and Avs at the time, quite a while to hammer out a deal.
Here's what the city gets from Ascent: a $165 million arena built, paid for, and operated by Ascent. And the city gets a guarantee that the Nuggets and the Avalanche will be playing in Denver for the next 25 years.
What did the city give up? $36.5 million in diverted property taxes to pay the developer for demolition and environmental remediation of that area, which up until '97 had been an EPA Superfund site. Nowadays, Kroenke Sports and Entertainment is back to paying property taxes on that site, $2.8 million this year alone, for the building, which is listed on the assessor's website as a 700,000 square foot building with 4 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms. I'm assuming they're talking about the Kroenke penthouse. But as Ball Arena considers renovations that could price out some fans, the former CEO's statement from 1997 feels relevant today.
Obviously, you don't want to open a building that no one can afford to come to.
What you actually do is you wait 25 years and then you make it less affordable. So at the time of construction, the city also threw in about $4.5 million for roads and infrastructure inside that area. And the city gave up on an old seat tax that they used to charge at McNichols Arena, which amounted to about $4 million a year. So yes, this was a privately funded building, but the city did still kick in some cash at the time. You know, they say that you won't often find a hockey or basketball arena that's publicly funded because they can be used year round, so they're a lot easier, you know, to make money.
To generate cash off.
Think about it.
Yeah.
You can have other tenants move in, concerts during the summer when the seasons aren't going on, concerts even during the season when the teams are out of town. A lot of money to be made at an arena like that.
That makes perfect sense. I would not have thought about why those indoor arenas might be different, but that makes total sense. And 4.5 bathrooms also makes sense if you have ever had the desperate need to urinate at halftime of a Nuggets game.
I will say I've always been able to find a bathroom that's open, usually not during the playoffs for the Avalanche, but other than that, it's not bad.
Is that because you're in the fancy seats? You're not in the fancy seats.
No, I'm not.
You're in the cheap seats.
No, I'm bleeding. My nose is bleeding every single time I'm up
You wear an oxygen mask in the second half.
I do, yeah.
All right. Steve, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, here's this, by the way.
This is feedback. I feel like I'm getting served with a lawsuit. This is feedback. We'll do feedback next. For 345 weeks, we've gone out to find your good news, but recently asked you to send it to us. Hundreds of one-line descriptors of life's beautiful moments, big and small. That brought joy to a lot of people reading it on social media. And here are a few favorites.
Seasons change, summer into fall, and we move from one season of our lives into another. Here's to all of you who saw such a moment and didn't wish for time to stop, but instead snapped a photo, made a memory of something that might only happen once. A new uncle, Bill, meeting a nephew, Calder, for the first time. Rosalie Smith, who always hiked 14ers for her birthday until she turned 80, taking a drive up to the top of Mount Evans to celebrate her 89th. Kim, who says she can finally put her hair in a tiny ponytail after 2 years of chemo. Shannon, marking her first week as an empty nester, all the kids gone to college and the Navy. Leanne from Parker, who went to her godmother's 69th high school reunion. It would have been Leanne's mother's reunion too. That's her on the pin. And Naomi Tashiro and her sister, who took their 104-year-old mother on an adventure together. Snapshots of changing seasons in our lives, capturing and enjoying those moments when they happen. That's good news indeed.
Feedback. Consuelo writes in with praise for Angelina McCall's reporting on the migrants, saying we must get a better process. Kathy says, I received and responded to the survey. Kyle's not wrong when he says Kroenke wants to put a party deck in Ball Arena. That's what we need. One more place for people to not watch sports in town. See you next time.